So about a year ago, I made a video talking about the impacts of certain cover crops on corn specifically, and I continue to see a lot of corn yield loss across the Mid-Atlantic region because of this. So I wanted to create another video and help educate farmers on the negative impacts of some of these cover crop systems that are really incentivized, specifically cereal rye ahead of corn. I see more yield loss because of that cover crop system that's so popular, mainly because of the cost share incentives. But I see so much yield loss that it is absolutely having a negative impact on farm income on a lot of corn acres. I mean, thousands of corn acres across the Mid-Atlantic. And I want to go into detail as to why, so you're better educated and you don't have this happen to you. So the overall incentive and ideas behind this monoculture rye cover crop system is good. The environmental impacts are strong. We are reducing soil erosion. We're recycling a lot of nutrients. We're conserving moisture in some cases. There's a lot of environmental positive impacts. However, ahead of corn, I am seeing across a very wide range of acres and operations significant yield loss in corn. And so I want to let you know that we really need to look at different management practices and whether or not cereal rye is the best option ahead of corn on your farm operation, regardless of the cost share incentives. We got to look at the value that it brings, not the money that it's helping us with cash flow that particular time of year. I think in most cases, the yield loss and the bottom line impact that it's having on farm operations is negative, not positive. And here's why. So planting cereal rye ahead of corn causes challenges at planting. If we let it get too big, we can lose a significant stand. I mean, we can have skips. We can lose moisture if we have a dry spring. With it, that gives us erratic emergence. Rye kind of clumps together and tillers up a lot like wheat. And look, this goes for a lot of your cereal cover crops. Wheat, barley, annual ryegrass is about the best grass cover crop species to be using, but cereal rice has the most foothold right now, biggest foothold in the marketplace, just because of the cost share incentives. But if we lose stand and we lose consistent emergence, that's offset any of the cost share money you get because you lose top end yield potential. So it's hard to plant through. So we definitely want to terminate it early. That's one way that we can manage around that. But depending on where you are, there's specific dates of when you can and can't terminate that crop in order to get your cost share. And some of these dates are not fitting for managing it properly, especially in the southern region. You might want to look at earlier or later maturities of rye to plant and use so they don't get too much growth early in the spring. It is a disease bridge. We're going grass to grass. So a lot of your diseases that break down the rye residue or the cereal residue also impact corn late season. Something a lot of people overlook because they're not in the field that time of year. But if we increase disease pressure on our corn and we lose yield because of that, that's another negative side effect of that cereal rye cover crop. The other big thing I see, and I think this is probably number 2 on the impact list of what it can do to your corn yields, is it ties up nitrogen. The carbon nitrogen ratio is terrible on rye. And on average, you're losing between 30 and 40 pounds of nitrogen where you have a thick rye cover crop in front of corn. And a lot of people aren't compensating for that. We need to be applying 30 to even 50 pounds of extra nitrogen where we have a thatch of rye on the surface ahead of corn. In most cases, people don't know that, and they're losing that much nitrogen. So I see a lot of nitrogen deficiencies where we have these rye cover crops ahead of corn. That's extra money that we need to be spending that offsets that cost share money. But in most cases, I see yield loss because we're not putting that extra nitrogen out. Between the erratic stand that we're getting behind rye, the loss of nitrogen that we have, the disease impact on corn, those three factors right there really impact the farmer's bottom line. And I think it's important to understand that there's options out there for better management. We can terminate that cover crop earlier, but then you don't get that cost share incentive. I love legumes ahead of corn. We don't have a disease bridge there. We're actually creating nitrogen, putting more potassium in our plants. It's better systems out there that might not look as good on paper because of cost share incentives, that they're much better for your bottom line. And it all starts with education and understanding what's out there. Even though rye cover crop is the #1 cover crop system in the Mid-Atlantic region, it is not the best system for a lot of acres. And it's important to understand what the impacts are, how you can manage around them, and even if it might not be the best option ahead of specific crops. The other thing that I just learned recently is that rye specifically, cereal rye, has biochemicals that it releases in the spring as it decays. If that cover crop fodder hasn't decomposed, it is releasing chemicals into the soil that inhibit growth of other plants. So it's good for weed suppression, but it also slows the impact and can negatively impact your stand of corn. There's a lot of negative impacts that specific cover crop system has when you're planting corn behind it. So I think it's important for you to understand what they are and either manage around it or avoid that cover crop system altogether. I don't care how much cost share money there is available for you. It might be costing you money in the long term. So if you want to learn more about the options for your operation and what's best for your rotation and your acres this fall, give us a call. Glad to come out and look at what you've got going on and talk in more detail about what is best for your operation and what might be costing you more money than you realize. Good luck out there.